One of the core building blocks inside of Panorama is the concept of a device group, which is exactly what I'm going to discuss and set up with you in this video. And for this discussion, let's imagine that we've got some firewalls in Nevada that we want to manage using Panorama, and we've got some firewalls in Oregon. And then within each of those locations, maybe we have a data center in Las Vegas. And in Oregon, perhaps we have a data center in Portland. And let's imagine there's a specific security policy rule that we want all of our firewalls that are in the Las Vegas data center to go ahead and have. What we can do is create the security policy rule or rules and then associate them with this group. And then as we add firewalls to this device group called Vegas, they'll automatically get those security policy rules. Or let's imagine we had a couple data centers, and we had one in Las Vegas and one in Reno. And we had some security policy rule entries that we wanted to be on the firewalls in Vegas and Reno. The cool thing is we could take those security policy rules and associate them with the device group Nevada, and then that would be inherited by Vegas and Reno and the respective firewalls in those groups. Or maybe we have something in the object category, like maybe a tag or maybe a security profile. And let's imagine we want all of our devices in Portland to have those objects as part of their configuration. What we could do is create those objects in Panorama and associate them with the Portland device group. And let's imagine we had another data center in Eugene. And we had those objects, we wanted them to be applied to not only devices in Portland, but also firewalls in Eugene. We could associate that with the Oregon device group, and then that would be inherited by any firewalls that are in Portland or Eugene. And another benefit besides central administration and configuration is that we are going to reduce the errors because we can create the objects and the policies in Panorama and have them pushed out consistently to those firewalls that are members of those groups that we specify. And here I'm relogging back into Panorama because it timed me out. And it says, welcome admin, there are no device groups. Please do this, which I know we're going to right now. So I'll click on OK. So here on the dashboard in Panorama, if we scroll all the way down, here in the widget called Manage Devices Information, it shows me I have one connected device, which is the firewall we just added. So to create device groups, what we're going to do is go to the Panorama tab. And we left it on the Summary tab under Manage Devices. So if we scroll over to the right, that's going to confirm that we have that connected device. Fantastic. Firewall 1. And what we're going to do is we are going to create a device group. So under Panorama, on the left-hand side, we'll go down to Device Groups, and we'll create one because there's none by default. So we'll click on Add to create a device group. And it's showing us here that we have one device. So we can add this to a device group as we create it, or we can add it later. Also, the parent device group right here, shared, think of that like the top of the pyramid. So if we are going to create these device groups, shared would be at the top, and below that, we'll go ahead and make one for Nevada, we'll make one for Oregon, and then below that, we can make one for Vegas, and one for Reno, and then under Oregon, I think we had Portland and Eugene. So when we're creating a device group, it's asking us where do we want to place it. And so if we say the parent device group is shared, it's going to place it right under shared. So as we get additional device groups, if we are going to create a group below Nevada, we'd specify that the parent would be Nevada when we get to that point. All right, so let's go ahead and create Nevada. And the filters give us the opportunity to restrict or limit the output here. And that's really handy if you have dozens or hundreds of firewalls to be able to find the one that you're interested in. We could also type up here and that would filter based on the name. So at this point, I just want to create the Nevada device group, and I'm not yet going to include Firewall 1 as part of that group. We'll add him in a bit. So we'll click on OK, and then let's go ahead and click on Add. Now we can also start by selecting the row of the one you want to be the parent, click on Add. And then from here, if we didn't want to create it directly under shared, we could go ahead and create it under Nevada. So let's create one called Vegas. Again, not putting the firewall in quite yet. Click on OK. And then let's make another one for Oregon and with a site called Portland under that. So we'll go ahead and click on Add. I'm going to specify the starting point. So with the drop down, I'm going to choose Shared and we'll call this Oregon and click OK. And then under Oregon, with that selected, I'll click on Add and we'll go ahead and make one for Portland. And that's going to be under Oregon. Perfect. All right, that's enough. We get the idea. So let me go ahead and adjust the columns. So we've got these device groups, and as we have firewalls that are onboarded, we can place these firewalls in the respective groups. So if we had 2 or 3 firewalls in Vegas, or we can make another group. We can make Data Center 1, Data Center 2, etc. And then you simply put the firewalls in the appropriate group, and that way they can get the right objects and policies that we want to push to those devices. Also, what I think is super fun is that when we created our very first device group, this was added to our menu item up at the top. we have a new tab for policies, a new tab for objects, and it's reminding us that both of those are now available because we have device groups. So right now, these are just groups without any specific values in them as far as what we want to have configured. But as a demonstration, let's do this. Let's create a security policy rule. That would be under policies. And let's associate that with Nevada, with that device group. And then to demonstrate objects, let's create an object. Let's create a tag as an object and associate that with Oregon, which would then be applied to firewalls in Oregon, and it would also be inherited by any objects in Portland. And if we had some value, whether a policy element or an object that we wanted everybody to get, we could go ahead and associate that with shared, and then any of the firewalls in those downstream groups, whether it's Nevada, Vegas, Oregon, or Portland, would inherit those if we set it at the shared level. So let's start with an example of a policy that we're going to associate with Nevada. So we just click right here on policies. Very similar to what we would do on an individual firewall. And here when we click on policies on the left-hand side, we have security, NAT, QoS, and so forth. But now it's asking about the placement for security rules. So with pre-rules selected as an example, and also I'm going to choose the correct device group. This is huge because if I use the default of shared, then this would be applied to any groups, including Oregon, Nevada, and any subgroups. So if I want to have this just for Nevada, I need to select the Nevada device group, and then I'll go ahead and configure the security rules that I want for that group. So with Nevada selected, we'll click on add. I'm going to call this Nevada sec rule, and as a demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and just say source any, destination any, because Panorama doesn't have any zones that it knows about yet. We'll fix that coming up too. Applications wide open, service category wide open, actions will allow it, and for target, it's right here under target. If we had multiple firewalls that were in the Nevada device group, we could select them here as recipients of who would get these security rules that we're adding. So at the moment, I don't have any of our firewalls in any of our groups. And there's a really important reason why we're not doing it yet, because our existing firewall has tons and tons of configuration, including network address translation, security profiles, you name it, it's all there. So we're going to hold off on putting that firewall into a group until we have all the data and all the objects from that managed firewall imported and brought into Panorama. So we're going to do that in a separate video, but that's intentionally why I'm not including Firewall 1 right now as a member of any of these device groups. All right, so with that in place, we'll click on OK. And now any devices that are in Nevada, that device group, when there's a commit and a push, they're going to get this new security rule. And it's going to be at the top of their security rules. All right, so that's an example regarding a security policy. Let's go under objects and let's create an object that will associate with Oregon. So as an example, we could use any of these objects, including security profiles. As a simple example, with object selected on the left-hand side, let's select tags. And this is also super important. It's leaving us here in the Nevada device group. So if we don't change this, whatever we put here is also going to be with the Nevada group. If we want these objects to be associated with just Oregon, we need to choose that device group. I'll choose Oregon. And then we'll click on add, and now we're adding to that device group called Oregon. So I'm going to call this Oregon tag. There's also an option at the firewall to override values that are pushed. If we want to disable that feature for this object, I can. I'm going to go ahead and leave the default there. And for the color, Oregon's got a lot of water these days. Let's go ahead and say it's forest green and click on OK. So when this gets pushed out, any firewalls that are in the Oregon device group or below would have configured on them from the push this Oregon tag as an object. All right, so let's go ahead and click on commit. And because I don't have my firewall yet as a member of any of these groups, I'm just going to go ahead and click here to commit to Panorama. We can also do a preview, just like we can at the firewall, of all the changes it's about to make. And then we'll click on commit. So I will let that complete in the background. And I've got a question for you. Because we have device groups, we now have the options of objects and policies. But what about like network settings and device settings? Where are those? Those, my friend, are in a separate section here on Panorama called templates, which you and I get to cover in the very next video. So I'll see you there, my friend, in just a moment. Meanwhile, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.